Today we'll be taking a close look at Internet censorship. Topics we'll be covering in this presentation include: what is Internet censorship? What kinds of content are being censored on the Internet? What parts of the world are most affected by Internet censorship? And why do governments censor Internet content? To understand what Internet censorship is and how it works, one must first understand how the Internet works. The Internet is actually more of a concept than it is a tangible thing. In the simplest of terms, the Internet is a series of connections between servers, computers, and other devices like smartphones, printers, and smart speakers. Every machine that is connected to the Internet needs to have an Internet Protocol address, or IP, so that it can be uniquely identified among the billions of other devices that are also connected. The IP works like a postal address, specifically and uniquely identifying a physical location on the planet. But an IP address isn't very human readable. A universal resource locator, or URL, is used to reverse translate an IP into something that humans can understand. When someone types a URL, like google.com, into an internet browser, that information gets sent to a DNS server that resolves the URL into an IP address, and then connects the browser to the specific device that is associated with that IP. There are three main ways in which the Internet is being censored. They are IP blocking, DNS tampering, and keyword filtering. ISP blocking occurs when an ISP blocks its users from returning content from certain IPs that have been deemed inappropriate by a governmental authority. DNS tampering consists of controlling DNS servers so that specific IP addresses appear not to exist to the end user. Keyword filtering involves employing sophisticated algorithms that search for specific forbidden terms which appear in website content, and masking or removing all or some of that content from a user's view. Now that we've seen how Internet censorship works, let's take a look at the types of content that are being censored on the Internet today. For a personal perspective on this, I conducted an interview with Haekwon Dai, who has lived in the United States for over 30 years but regularly makes lengthy trips to China to visit family.
So when you're visiting China, in what ways is your access to the internet restricted, and are you not able to visit certain websites or use other technologies that you might be able to easily use in the US?
Well, there are lots of websites blocked in China. For example, Google is not accessible, Facebook is not accessible, and Twitter is not accessible. And there are lots of news site is not available to the audience in China.
China has blocked access to dozens of websites and apps that are readily available in almost every other part of the world.
So is there any specific type of information that you know of that in particular gets censored? Is it, do you know that there's like an agenda for a certain type of information that they're trying to block?
Well, I think the regime is really afraid of you are able to search any information regarding to the Communist Party or personnel if they have like a certain corruption record, or what happens in back then, what had been done, and to person, to party members, to whatever it is. I think the most sensitive information are all those. But some of those are like porn stuff they don't want to expose to majority large population. I think that's a good part, but for the political reason, they block a lot of those things. Because they try to propaganda the party, we call positive, thing. But any negative about the Chinese government or Communist Party, they don't want you to see that. So that's mainly the censorship go for.
So, and this wasn't on the list of questions I asked you, but for the specific types, like the coronavirus outbreak, most recently, do you know if they censor the medical information?
I don't know typical about the medical information, but they do not want the people to reporting the negative slow responses from government, or questioning about how they did not do certain good job, or some medical doctors try to tell the real what's happening. and they do block a lot of those. They actually in the social media, for example, everybody using they call WeChat, and on WeChat they have like video, they have text, just like a combination of the Facebook plus Twitter. So, but from there, if you have a big good article tell about the truth, they just really zap that article. You cannot read anymore. And any truthfully story, if there anything negative about the government, and they're gonna be you can negative that you can't see anything like that. So yeah, it's a lot of article being censored and removed. Yeah, it's really bad.
China is one of the most notorious countries that engages in internet censorship, and certainly the largest. But where else in the world does internet censorship occur? To some degree or other, almost all countries engage in some form of internet censorship, with some of the worst offenders existing in Asia, the Middle East, and Africa. Even the USA censors the internet, even seizing some website domains that violate certain laws. Given the prevalence of government censorship of content on the internet, it begs the question, why is internet content being censored? The ethical arguments for internet censorship usually center around the following ideas. To stop the spread of malicious rumors and false media reports. Prohibit users from engaging in illegal or illicit content, such as the trading of drugs or child pornography. Curtail efforts of terrorist organizations, such as the recruiting for and the planning of acts of terror and destruction. Deterring immoral and addictive behaviors like pornography and fruitless endeavors. And inhibiting the spread of hate speech and other types of negative propaganda like historical revisionism. Ethical arguments against internet censorship include undermining of personal privacies and freedoms and the rejection of the nanny state, violating of basic human rights like freedom of speech and freedom of the press, limiting of political freedoms and information, brainwashing and or whitewashing of facts and statistics, monopolizing and controlling the free flow of information between individuals and organizations. In the following video clip, Barney Wharf, a professor in environmental studies at the University of Kansas, talks more about the reasons that governments censor the internet.
The ostensible reasons for internet censorship typically include things like protecting public morality, protecting the public from things like pornography or internet gambling. But the real reasons for internet censorship often have very little to do with that. It typically involves governments' attempts to suppress freedom of speech. Many governments are terrified of the alternative voices that the internet offers and the opportunity to bypass government control of the mainstream media. Many governments trot out national security, typically very vaguely defined, as a basis for internet censorship. But the reality is much more an interest in curtailing civil liberties and trying to channel the appropriate flows of information to their own publics.
In conclusion, we've seen that internet censorship is the blocking of specific internet content from users, and it is accomplished mainly through IP blocking, DNS tampering, and keyword filtering. Websites, search terms, and apps that are deemed inappropriate by governmental authorities are targets for internet censorship. Nearly all countries censor internet content in some form, but the most censorship occurs in countries in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. There are arguments for and against internet censorship, but on the whole, censorship is intended to control and suppress the free flow of knowledge and information. I hope that you have enjoyed viewing this presentation on internet censorship. I would like to thank Hai Quan Dai for sharing his personal experiences with internet censorship, and thank you for watching.